Hi, loves, and welcome to the With Love Always podcast, a podcast to help you live the life you were created for. We are your hosts and your friends, Bree
and Marissa,
and we're so grateful you're here.
We pray you listen and leave feeling more inspired, encouraged, and uplifted.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. We are so grateful as always that you are tuning in to the conversation and joining in on the friendship today. For today's episode, we are talking all about boredom, and we really were so inspired by this episode. By the time this is released, it's going to be nearing the holidays, and we know it's that time of the year where all the momentum of the year, all the fast pace of life finally feels like it might be slowing down. Maybe work is starting to slow down. Maybe you're gearing up to go home for the holidays. Maybe friends are starting to leave town. Maybe your schedule is starting to clear. And maybe you're finding that you have more time on your hands than you feel like you've had literally all year. And I think there's something really beautiful about the holidays of kind of inviting this slowness and stillness that I think we've all been craving. But then I know, at least for myself, when we have more time on our hands after a year of momentum or a season of pushes or lots of responsibilities or unending time of being on the go, sometimes when we have more time on our hands, all of a sudden we feel like we are bored and we don't know what to do with that boredom. We wrestle with that boredom. And so we want to have this conversation today as we're all gearing up for the season ahead with the holidays, going home, family, or staying back, to really reinvent this idea of what boredom truly means and to redefine the beautiful gift of what more time on your hands may be looking like in this season ahead. So this conversation was so inspired. As we're entering the holiday season, I have just seen this pattern in myself year after year. Like, can think back even to like high school or middle school, even when it's like the holidays and like suddenly you're out from school or you're dismissed from, college, or when you're working, you have like a week off from work and everyone's going home for the holidays or whatever your plan is, where you're like so excited, you're anticipating all this free time. I do this every single year, but then you arrive to the free time and you're like, I'm literally so bored out of my mind. Like, all I want is to go back home, or all I want is to fill my time again with things to do, or, oh gosh, I realize that resting's not for me. And like, I actually love working so much. And I just think it's this funny thing that I have seen in myself year after year after year, literally. I mean, not even just with the holidays, just like in life, it's like we always want what we don't have. Like, when life feels like it's overwhelming, we're burnt out, we're on the go, work is weighing heavy on us, we can't keep up with our friendships, we can't keep up with our schedules. All we want is to feel bored. All we want is for life to slow down enough for us to take a deep breath. But then when life slows down for us to take a deep breath, we're suddenly not satisfied and we're like, wait, no, I want to go back to work. I want to go back to a full schedule. And it's just this ebb and flow of not really having this beautiful balance and beautiful invitation to really, just like rest in having no plans. And so this was really inspired by me gearing up for the holidays and like thinking about that internal conflict that I feel with myself. And then it kind of like jumped into this whole concept of boredom. And why is boredom by association something that we like deem so negatively? We're so afraid to feel bored. And I think it's because we have created this perspective or this definition that boredom is a bad thing and boredom must equate to something lacking in your life versus this beautiful invitation to actually invite more into your life through stillness. And so as I was just kind of like constructing this idea as this beautiful part of beholding boredom, I wanted to see what like the world's definition of boredom was. And so I looked it up on Google, and this is actually by definition one of the many that I found. And let me just say that every definition was like so negative. And this one says, the definition of boredom is a state of being weary and restless through a lack of interest. So synonyms include restlessness, sluggishness, uninterest once again, or the feeling of blah. And that part really cracks me up, of just like the feeling of blah, because I know for myself, like that is by association what I always time and time again look look at my time of too much time on my hands, an empty schedule, nothing to do, as a time of blah versus a time of delight. And so when I was reflecting on that, I was like, wow, I really want us all, including myself, to redefine what boredom can actually look like in our life and find this beautiful newfound definition that the world is not going to give you, but we pray to encourage you in this conversation today.
Yeah, I feel like the word boredom, it kind of feels like a dirty word.
Yeah.
Like, even if you ask people how they are, even if somebody was truly bored, I've never heard somebody in my entire life say, oh yeah, I'm just really bored right now. Like, I'm in a season of boredom. And I think, granted, like with this conversation, we want to redefine boredom. I think the goal isn't ultimately that we all are existing in a state of boredom all of the time, but I think it's that we're not afraid to step into a space of boredom, and that it doesn't lead to a feeling of blah. Like, I personally feel like boredom, when I heard that definition, I was like, that's more a perspective. Like, we can feel bored when we are in a season of busyness, like we can have so much going on and we can be disengaged. We can be feeling blah. Or the moment that we actually have an opportunity for stillness or for rest, we can sit in that and we can just be like, I'm bored. I have nothing to do. So therefore I'm going to just fill my time. So I think the goal is ultimately not being afraid of creating space for quote unquote boredom. Yeah. I think that's something that we should so embrace. And I think as we continue to unpack this, you'll kind of start to see why we're pushing for this, why we would even encourage seeking boredom in the first place, and really the beauty that can be born out of boredom. And so, yeah, I think this is just a fun conversation. It's kind of a fun way to challenge ourselves. And I know that I can think of that moment, especially in the holidays, where everything just kind of dissipates and I pull out my phone and start checking my work email just for some dopamine, and I'm panicking.
Whoa.
And I even think there's such a reality of the moment we have that stillness, we almost can get the boredom blues, which is just where you kind of you're confronted with these emotions that you didn't even know were below the surface that you might not want to deal with. And so I think we're just going to unpack all of that. And ultimately, just our goal is not to be afraid of that there's so much beauty that can be brought out of that stillness. There's so much beauty when we can actually strive to enter a place in which we are bored, and that we don't try to run away from it. We actually try to really embrace it.
Yeah. And I love even what you said about the dopamine hit of seeing you got an email, and it's the dopamine hit of having something to do. And I think I am so guilty of this as someone who can struggle sometimes with toxic productivity.
Don't we all?
Don't we all? But we're so afraid to be still. And I think I know I'm afraid to be still. I do, and will be the first to say that I can often associate my sense of worth in the things that I do. So a sense of productivity, even if it's a minor productivity, like doing my laundry and getting clean sheets on the bed, that's just an everyday responsibility that I have to attend to. But to define my evening of quote unquote rest by therefore still accomplishing is still not true stillness. We are so culturally afraid to be still. And I think, honestly, I don't know if we know how to be still. And I will, said, be the first to confess that I don't know if I know how to truly be still. There's moments when I captured glimpses of it and I feel the beautiful fruit and the beautiful reward of actually being still. But I think we're living in a world that is not promoting boredom as a beautiful thing. It's promoting boredom as a blah thing, a thing to avoid. We should be running away from being too still. We should be filling our life with things that are advancing our careers, advancing our name, giving us greater sense of worth. But that's where God just defines so much of the things of this world to be something so different. And as always, encouraging our hearts in the process of this conversation. But The intention of this is truly to take the blah out of boredom and instead replace it with the beauty of boredom and truly like the beholding of boredom. I think there's something that in that quiet stillness of being quote unquote bored, God wants to behold and capture our hearts in a way that the rush of this world will not offer us, will not supply us, will not give us the true rest that our hearts is craving for. And so I think as we're all entering the holiday season and we know that more time's going to be on our hands, we know we're going to have moments where the intrusive thought in our head is, man, I'm so bored. I wish life was normal. I'm ready for the new year. We want to embrace a beholding boredom alongside of you guys. And so something I was really thinking about and reflecting on just in this conversation is truly this deep belief that I've just seen in my time with God and relationship with God is that I really believe that stillness is one of God's love languages. And the reason why I share that is because I think of the times that God has most profoundly spoken to me, and it's always been when I was willing to silence myself, slow down, and truly just be still and be beholding Him. And that is so challenging in a world that will continue to demand so much of us. And so because we can't rely on the world to slow down for us, we have to learn how to create that sanctuary within ourselves. And I think I've learned through different seasons of my life, whether it's been really busy seasons where I feel like I'm in a push season, and truly that's what I felt like the past couple months of my life have been. I feel like it's been a constant push. What God has really shown me is that, Brie, it's not about living a slow life. It's about having a slow sanctuary of a mind. And then I've also been in seasons where it's like, man, this season is slow and I don't see any momentum happening in any area of my life. But if my mind is loud, it doesn't matter how slow my circumstances is, my mind is still loud and I'm still not quiet enough to hear those small, still whispers of God. And so what I've really realized as I was just like unpacking this, it's not the circumstances around us that we need to change. It's the heart posture, our spirit posture, and our willingness to pursue stillness and receive boredom as this beautiful gift that we are invited into to actually hear the small, still voice of God. And I know for myself, in a world that is like constantly stimulating us, whether it's a dopamine hit from an email, whether it's the mindless scroll of social media, whatever it may be, I know that we are constantly being distracted from that still small voice. And I think about moments, especially in this season of my life, where I feel like I've been pushing, I've been in such a busy season, and I just like feel like a broken record. Mercy even knows, which just things I've been expressing that are challenges in my life and things that I'm wishing would change or question marks I have over myself and my story and what's next. Really what it takes is not the removal of all these responsibilities in my life. It's really just inviting stillness. And I think so often we are in search and pursuit of, answers to our lingering questions, wondering what is next for us in life. We're confronted with the challenges within ourselves, the struggles within our hearts, the disappointments we might feel from this year, all of these lingering things, especially as the year comes to a close. There's so much to behold. There's so much to process. And we are sometimes so afraid that if we are still enough, we are going to feel the stings of it all. We're going to feel the stings of, the things we need to work on. We're going to feel the stings of loneliness. We're going to feel the stings of disappointment. We're going to feel, maybe we'll receive the answer that we don't want to hear from God, like whatever it may be. But that is why being still is so necessary, and to really invite this space where God can finally whisper loud enough for you to hear Him. And I think that is why, like in this conversation, I want to remind myself of this, because I know a lot of my life lately has felt like a lack or an absence of this, of I'm not giving God the space to be louder than the noise of this world. And I want to slow down enough for His voice to be amplified in the stillness, for me to delight in the love language of Him versus the love language of the pursuits of this world. And yeah, I don't know. That's where it's like, I was just having this big like aha moment of, we are so afraid of boredom, but boredom is actually could be the key that unlocks so much for us.
Yeah, I think what's so funny about even recording an episode on boredom is just the fact that we very much are not at a place in which we feel bored, but that is our full intention of like, even I am like, I can't wait to get to the place where I'm just bored. Like I can envision that Christmas week and things wind down. But I think where this conversation really starts to challenge us and challenge myself even is just something that the Lord has been reminding me of recently. And you've said it so well, like we just can't wait for our lives to slow down for us. I think we have to hit the brakes on our circumstances if we can when it's suitable, but truly just hit the pause button on our minds, because that's the one thing we can control. Is we can't control how busy work is, all the responsibilities we have, but we can control how much we're letting into our minds. And I think if we're really honest with ourselves, there are a lot of moments in which we are just continuing to fill our minds with more and more and more. And I think the busier we are, the more anxious we are. That anxious energy, like we all of a sudden have a moment of stillness and we're like, I can't relax and I don't feel relaxed. So I'm going to grab my phone and I'm going to anxious scroll. And then I'm going to like, it's just, it's in those moments where you feel wanting to reach for things, wanting to do these things, that I actually think is the best time to just be so strict with yourself and just say no. Like, I'm not going to reach for my phone. I'm not going to call my friend right now. I'm not going to put on that podcast. I am just going to go on a walk in silence. I'm going to make dinner in silence. I am going to invite this stillness into my life. And I really think it's like, I just so want to encourage, like, if you're feeling so busy and overwhelmed, like this conversation is still for you. And actually a recent little story time I wanted to share was, I am in like very much busy season for work. I work for a church, and so Christmas is our busiest time of year. We have so many events, and I do all of our event planning. And so I was just looking at the week ahead and feeling just so overwhelmed. And I knew that we had some additional events on top of working like 8 hours that day. I was then going to have to stay till like 10 p.m. for events. And I was like, I just don't know if I can do it. Like, I'm already so exhausted. My body's physically exhausted and healing. And anyways, there was essentially a worship event, and was honestly looking for a way to see if I could leave early, because I really didn't need to be there once like the event actually started. However, I didn't have my car. This was last week, and my car was getting repairs. So my husband and I were sharing a car. Well, he was playing drums for the worship event, which is awesome. But that meant that I was going to have to truly work from 8 a.m. that morning until wasn't going to get home till 11 p.m. And I was already feeling like borderline, I could be getting sick. I'm so exhausted. And so I was like, okay, I'm at the end of myself on this one. And there's nothing I can do. I'm going to be there. I might as well just commit to it. And it was truly one of those moments where I was like, Holy Spirit, you've called me to this job, to this place. This event is for your glory. I'm like, you are going to need to sustain me. And I am just going to show up, and help me to find stillness, help me to find rest. Anyways, long story short, we go and do the event. Thankfully, the beauty of me not having to work during the event is that I actually just got to sit there and worship. And it was something that was so counterintuitive of like, in my busiest moment, here I am, instead of like even sleeping, honestly, I just like embraced this moment of worship. And I just felt like the Lord was just speaking to me so clearly. And he's like, I'm going to give you rest for your soul. And I just saw this like picture in my mind of like me carrying all of these like heavy backpacks. And I just truly was like unloading them like at the feet of Jesus. I would just like take it off and just not even gracefully, just like drop it, like just drop them all down. And then it was so sweet because somebody came up and was like, I feel like the Lord just wants to say for this room, like, you're going to find rest for your soul. And so it was so special to, not only was that my experience, that was what other people were experiencing. And at the end of the night, I just remember having the most energy I've I'd had in weeks. Like I felt so full of life, and that carried over until like the next day and the following day. I was like, almost felt this glow and just this lightness, and I felt so free and so at peace. And so I don't know if that even fully connects to boredom, but I just wanted to share that story of like, you don't have to wait for your life to slow down. Like when we seek, whether it's boredom or stillness or time with the Lord, like he will meet us there and he will sustain us. Like it was such a reminder of, who am I to think that the Lord cannot sustain me through the seasons of my life? Wow. Like he can give me the energy I need, and he can give me a lightness, and it's in my worship and it's in my surrender and my weakness that he can then fill me back up. And so we just want you guys to get to a place where you're not afraid of boredom, you're not afraid of stillness, because I really think that's the moment you're going to find rest. Yeah. Rest in ways that you didn't even know you could receive rest, and just a filling back up.
Yes. And I love that story so much, because how counterintuitive is that? Like, that is not the stillness that you thought you needed. No. Like, your definition of stillness in that moment, as has mine been so many times, is like, I need to go home and I need to sleep, or I need to go home and, you know, make dinner for myself and sit down on the couch and like, you know, just zone out. And I think that's also where like the counterfeit is too, is like we think that boredom is really, really boring when we run out of our favorite TV show, when we've listened to all the podcast episodes we want to listen to, not ours, when we have talked and caught up with every friend, when there's nowhere to go, nowhere to be, nowhere to dress up, nowhere, like nobody to see. It's like, actually, you have in your access like the greatest friend, the greatest fill, greater than any story you could ever watch on TV. Like you have this beautiful romance with God, with Jesus at your fingertips, and that is going to fill that boredom to the brim that nothing, no other sign or form of rest here on earth will ever satiate. Like, and I think that's so beautiful too, because it's even in that example, it's almost as if it's like, well, you weren't bored in that moment, you were exhausted, but it's still the same concept. Is like, what are we inviting into our hearts when even our circumstances aren't permitting stillness, aren't permitting quote unquote boredom? Where are we allowing our spirits to fall? Like, are we in search of always reaching for the forms of rest that the world's offering us? Or are we in search of spiritual rest that only God can offer us? Like the reward will be so different. And I think, I mean, even such a tangible example is like this podcast. Like so many times for Marissa and I, through push seasons that I feel like we've both been in, paralleled in such a different way, but also in such a similar breath of feeling really worn and really weary. And yet somehow, time and time again, where this like beauty is found for us is truly like having conversations about God, like on this podcast. Like the way that fills my spirit up in no way that any extra hour of sleep ever could, any other form of like rest, being on social media, watching a movie ever could. Like there's something about the presence of God that will give the fill to your boredom and to your pursuit of stillness that nothing else will. And so I love that story so much. And I think a story that I even wanted to share that actually happened to me today, that was part of what inspired this episode, is in my active pursuit to like be more present, to invite boredom or like lulls in the in-betweens. I think we're always looking to fill the in-betweens of things. And I was taking an Uber out here this morning, and I was like, at first on my phone, it was like going to be a 45-minute Uber. So at first I was on my phone, I was just like knocking out some work things. And then I just found myself mindlessly on social media, like catching up on people's posts, watching stories that I wasn't even fully engaging with. I was just doing it mindlessly. And I really heard God be like, put your phone down. Like, be willing to be bored. Be disengaged from whatever your phone is trying to falsely stimulate you with, and be bored. Like, have nothing to do in the backseat for the remaining 35 minutes, like look out the window at nothing special, but like look out the window. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to be bored in this moment, and I'm not going to fill my time with mindless scrolling, like urgency or anxiety to text people back, or the temptation for the dopamine hit to check my email. Like, I'm just going to be bored and be present with whatever the remainder of this Uber ride is meant to entail. I put my phone down. I actually put it in my purse so I wouldn't be tempted to reach for it or to be like seeing notifications coming in. And I swear something in that Uber ride shifted. And because I was willing to put my phone down, suddenly emerged like this beautiful conversation that I ended up having with my Uber driver. And in that moment, I immediately received from God, which not saying that your Uber drives always have to look like this, because sometimes rest is like not engaging too. But in that moment, God like invited me. He like gave me a download of literally the specific topic he wanted me to talk about with this Uber driver. And not only that, he wanted me to be able to therefore encourage her through the segue that this topic would offer me. And so we started conversating and just talking, and she started sharing about her life story and just like details that were so beautiful and so intimate to her. And from that place, I kept asking questions, I kept engaging, I kept encouraging, and ending with how much God loved her, and told her, like, literally when I was getting out of the Uber, I was like, there was just something that when I put my phone down and I was done doing work on my phone, that the moment I was present in the car with you, I could feel how much God loved you. And I just want to leave you with that. And it was in that moment that she turned around. I mean, like for the first time, because of course she was driving, as I was getting out, and she's like, wow, like, thank you so much, Bree. And she literally made a mention of my spirit. And she was like, I felt something really different about you sitting in my backseat. And I drive a lot of people.
Wow.
And it was just a moment like that I was like, because I was willing to be bored, God invited me into a beautiful opportunity to minister and to love to someone else. And not that every moment of boredom has to be a ministry opportunity, or every moment of boredom has to be filled with talking to someone else. Actually, I think there's a lot of beauty in not talking to other people and permitting yourself the ability to be just existing and to not be productive, even for ministry purposes. Like, not everything has to have an agenda of like boredom does not need to equate to like this beautiful big moment like I just described, because that's also still striving, and we do not want to encourage that in your boredom. But I just had a moment where I was like, literally got out of the Uber and I started to cry, because I was just like so overwhelmed of like, God, I would have never heard your whisper if I didn't give myself permission to be bored. If you didn't demand me to set my phone down and to literally just exist in this moment of the in-between of where I am and the destination I'm going. And it was just so powerful, and really just like inspired this conversation with me of like, I want more of that. I want more room to be bored. And I think a really beautiful byproduct, which is like taking this a step even deeper, is that something I think we all can wrestle with different portions of our identity, and God knows us so intimately, and he knows specifically how to encourage us each. And I think something that I can really like be a thorn in my flesh or a thorn in my identity is feeling like not worthy, not enough, and just like not feeling loved. I think sometimes like that's just like a lingering thought that will go through my head of like, oh, I'm not actually really loved. And so something I ask God often, like almost every single day, and he knows how to do it for me specifically, is I just ask God, I'm like, God, I just pray that you would just make me feel really loved today in a way that's so specific to me. It doesn't have to be this grand thing. It can be a small moment, like seeing a beautiful flower that I'm like, wow, I love that flower. Like, God knows that that's enough for me.
Wow.
But
so sweet.
I prayed because I woke up literally with that lingering feeling of just kind of defeat, feeling not enough, feeling not loved. And I just literally asked God in the stillness of my mind, God, I just pray that you would make me feel really loved today. And getting in the Uber, being willing to be bored, and then having this divine encounter and conversation with my Uber driver literally, when I got out of that car, I cannot even describe how loved I felt by God. But I think what was so beautiful is, and what is so counterintuitive to the world, is the world will tell you to find more identity and to feel more loved, do things that advance only yourself. But what God says is actually give it all away to somebody else. Give it all away to my people, to others, serving, loving, putting yourself aside, putting people above and before you. And that is the thing that will actually make you feel more loved and more worthy and more deserving. And that was truly the byproduct. It wasn't me directly being encouraged. It was me encouraging someone else through the byproduct of being bored, that I then felt greater affirmation that, whoa, I am so loved by God. And I think that's just one example of how the beauty of beholding your boredom multiplies and multiplies and multiplies, or has the potential to, into so many things just beyond that immediate moment in time. So with all of this beautiful, magical thing said, you might be thinking, well, how do I do this? And there are truly infinite ways that you guys might think of that are so beyond even me and Marissa. But these were just a few of the tangible ways that even in the midst of a busy season, I'm inviting boredom into my life, but also into the season ahead of, like, as we enter the holidays and things are slowing down, is like really embracing the full slow pace of what life gets to be, if that's, you know, the time that you find on your hands. And so wherever you fall, whichever circumstance or bucket you're in, as we enter this, you know, home stretch of the year, we just pray that these little small invitations to really be super present with yourself and super inviting of more stillness can really inspire more of just those gentle whispers into your heart, and also more fill for your spirit. So these are some of the things that I try to do in practice, and as always, never perfect, but they help. So some practices of beholding boredom. First one is practicing silence both internally and externally. And I mean, that's really kind of the overarching thing. And I think there's a real beauty of quieting both your environment, but also quieting your mind. I think your environment could be externally silent, but if your mind is loud, you're still going to be in anguish. And so we're going to share different things that kind of fall into both buckets of quieting your external, but also learning how to really quiet and captivate your internal mind and thought process. So my first one that I used to never do, because I love listening to things, but is actually driving without music.
This is hard.
It's hard. I love music so much. And there's nothing wrong with listening to music, but just give it a go. Like, give it a go. Don't fill the space. And maybe you'll find yourself like having a full-on conversation with God. I know I do that sometimes, where I'm like, well, I'm not listening to anything that's like droning me out or like droning out my breathing or the noise of traffic. So sometimes I just start talking to God, or sometimes I just sit there and I realize, like, wow, silence is kind of nice sometimes.
It's surprising. Speaking of like avoiding boredom, this is so hard. I really, really, really don't like driving in silence. So much rather listen to a podcast or music. But every time I do, I am always so thankful. Like, it truly is one of those things. Sometimes it's just letting my mind have thoughts.
Yeah.
Other times it's like I will start praying the best prayers I feel like happen in the car.
I feel like I start preaching sermons in the car.
Truly.
Do you ever do that?
I'll just like out loud to God, and I'm like, and I pray for this person.
Yeah, same.
And I declare, who is she?
Yeah.
I'm like, that is not how my prayers typically sound. But it's just like the undivided attention. Like, the Holy Spirit is waiting for that. He really is waiting for that. Okay, number 2 is same kind of idea. Go on a walk without a podcast. Unless it's ours. Just kidding. Just going on silent walks. I will do this because I feel safe to do this. I'll just leave my phone at home. And I'm just full tech free, and it feels kind of funny. You're like, I feel a little too light, like I should be holding something. Yeah. But it's really sweet, because then you'll like engage with your neighbors, and you'll just start to notice like, that's what's so funny. This is a bit of a side note, but sometimes Brie will say things like, that flower is so beautiful. And I've had other friends of mine that are like, how does Brie, like, that's so amazing that she just is like captivated by this flower. And it truly is one of those things where it sounds wild until, like, I even remember meeting you and I'm like, I'd love to be like that. And then it will happen. Like, it happens and you'll shock yourself of like when you're present enough and you notice the little details and you're like, that is the most beautiful tree I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's like so crazy. I'm like, why am I saying that? But it's true. Like, just these simple little details. And also it's all God's creation. So it feels like all of these little like moments of love and little details that he's like waiting to impress literally his daughter and be like, look at this that I made for you. Like, I've been waiting for you to notice.
I love God so much. And that's so sweet. Thank you for saying I love that. Another one is eating a meal in silence. Oh my gosh. This is actually so funny. And I put this on this list because I think it was literally just this weekend, like a couple days ago. I like got food. I was by myself. I was just having a solo evening that night. And I was eating my food. And like halfway through eating, I realized I was like, oh my gosh, like I've been quiet this whole time. I'm not listening to music. I'm not watching anything. And I almost felt like this sudden urge of like I was doing something wrong.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, like why don't I have music playing right now on my TV? Like why am I not watching something? Why am I not scrolling? And then I was like, hold on, like that's honestly alarming that I thought that was wrong. Like I had a moment where I felt like I wasn't doing something right because I was eating in silence. I wasn't stimulated. I was literally zoned out on my food, like eating.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was like, wait, no, I should be doing this more. And I prayed that I start doing this more so it doesn't like almost disrupt me when I do it. As if I'm doing something wrong. And I think even that little glimpse just showed me in that moment of like, whoa, I'm so used to filling my time and space and like mental head with something at all times, like listening, receiving music or watching, receiving a show or a video or scrolling and like the act of moving, even during meals that I was like, wait, the fact that alarmed my system so much is the concern.
So I've so been there though. Number 4 is sit with a friend in silence. You can journal, take in surroundings, read together. And it's actually super sweet because we've actually never done this before. Brie got here really early and we wrote I was supposed to write an outline. I didn't end up doing that. Started to write one.
We got some good ideas.
Yeah, we're set. 2025, we're ready.
Done. The whole year. No, I'm kidding.
But we were both just like hanging out outside, doing separate things like reading and writing and just not talking. And genuinely, I felt this moment of like, this is a love language. Like in a friendship moment of like, this is one of my, like, I love hanging out with you in that way of like, we've never gotten to do that before. Because normally it's like our time, we have so much to catch up on. It's so nice to just exist.
Yeah.
And with somebody else you love, that feels special.
Yeah. And you feel safe.
Yeah.
And it's like, like a new form of rest. It was really, really sweet. I loved it. Another one, it kind of goes hand in hand. So I'll do the next couple, but literally stare at nature uninterrupted. I actually did this when we were sitting together outside. There was a point where I was just like staring, like literally like zoned out, staring at your lemon tree that doesn't have lemons currently. And I was just like watching the way that the wind was like blowing the leaves. And the thought crossed my head of like, these are the moments that God craves more of us, like for us to have more of. But these are the moments that the world tells you that you're not doing enough. And, you know, like the saying of like, well, don't watch the grass grow or like something like that. Or like, yeah, you're going to wait so long that the grass is going to grow. Or I don't know exactly how the saying goes. But that saying is always like in relation to like the time that passes is like a bad thing. Or it's like it's going to take a long time. But I think literally staring at nature uninterrupted, even in that moment, like fixating my mind. I was thinking no other thoughts and literally watching the action of the wind blowing through the leaves. And I was like, that is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And giving myself that permission to be so captivated by something so small and letting the rest of my thoughts dump for a second was really, really, really restful. And yeah, some people would be like, that's so boring. But I was like, no, it actually filled my spirit to give me the capacity to then write my outline.
Yeah, I'm convinced that's a spiritual practice. Like when you do that, it feels really holy. You feel when you like connect with creation, I feel like you connect with the creator if you know the creator. And so it really feels like an act of worship. Truly. It's so special. I love it. Next one is to stand in line and not go on your phone. I know we've talked about that in another episode, but I think it's just an important reminder in public. Like such a beautiful example was like the story you shared of being in the Uber. And I think there are so many moments where it's like, yes, in a ministry capacity, but also just in so many other ways. It's like people are waiting to be noticed and there's a world that's waiting to be noticed and a God that's waiting to be noticed. And so I think when we can just make that the abnormal thing, where I had this moment, I was at the beach the other day just eating some food. I took my lunch break there and I was like, oh, I do have to do some work things real quick. And I felt so guilty, even though everyone else on the beach was on their phone. But I'm like, I like this. I like feeling guilty for going on my phone for a few minutes versus like, I wasn't on it the rest of the time. Like that should feel invasive. Like I almost felt like this feels rude. And I'm like, rude to who? I'm not even with anyone, but it should feel like I am like, there are things to like behold. Yeah. Like we've been saying, it should feel rude to like disrupt that.
Yeah, I love that. That just perfectly described how I feel like when I'm on my walks sometimes and I'm getting like work text or like text in general. I'm like, no. Don't interrupt this moment for me. Like, don't demand my attention from my phone. Like, even, and this is another silly example. Like, I was at the gym the other morning. I think it was, knowing me, it was probably like yesterday morning. Everything's like so like recent in my brain, but I was on the Stairmaster at the end. And in that moment, I was like, okay, perfect. I'll just be productive for the next 20 minutes and start working on work stuff for the day. And then I was like, no, like everything can wait. Like just give it permission to wait, whether you're beholding nature or you're just being present with something, going on a walk, doing something for yourself. It's like, let it wait. Nothing has that much urgency that it has to take precedence of like the stillness of being present with what you're doing. And I think, we just live in such a hurried world. We're always like trying to hurry or like do everything optimally, like standing in line or sitting on the beach. It's like not everything has to be optimized. So with that, like also trying not to check your text or like phone at a stoplight. That's like one of those moments that we're always like wanting to default to filling our time with something. Another one that I need to work on, ending the day by not turning on the TV or turning to your phone to fill space.
I just sold our TV so that literally because
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had this moment where honestly somebody today was like, I can pick it up Saturday. And I was like, there are a few shows I'm really enjoying watching right now. But then I had this thought that was, if I don't have a TV and I'm forced to do something else other than watch those few shows that I like, what am I going to discover? Like what? And I saw it as an opportunity and I was like, what? There's something waiting. I could feel it of like, I'm going to have to get creative. My husband's going to have to get creative. And I think it's going to be worth it. I don't think we're going to regret it. So I'm excited to see. It's honestly a challenge.
I love that.
Some additional ones: combat inner noise with outward prayer if your mind is loud. Ooh, is this a good one? It works, guys. It really does.
Yep.
Choose a day of rest or Sabbath. I love this one so much.
Yeah, and then last one, this was kind of like one that was even inspired by my Uber ride this morning. And it's choose to commit to the conversation that you would usually opt out of because you're too busy, you're in a rush, or you just don't have time. there are some things so powerful about like just giving space to be interrupted, giving space to like set aside your urgency, set aside your agenda, set aside your life.
Yeah.
To be interrupted and to have conversation with people and fill your time and space with someone that you may not usually deem like worthy of your time. And so I love filling my boredom with that. I know it makes me feel more fulfilled. But like we said, there's so many other practices that we could encourage and speak on when it comes to beholding your boredom. And truly, like, we're just now like at the cusp of figuring this out for ourselves. Like, literally was having a revelation of it in Marissa's backyard earlier before we recorded. So we're learning actively with you, but we pray that this conversation just redefined, encouraged, and refreshed your spirit on what the invitation of boredom can look like. I pray that that word would now be used as a beautiful beholding word and not only a negative connotation over your life. I pray that you would see it as a token of opportunity to really just press into yourself and press into what God may be whispering in the silent moments. And if you're in a busy season and you feel like boredom is not at your expense, we pray that it invites just this greater heart to seek stillness in moments when you cannot physically be still, but your spirit can. So we love you guys so much. We're learning alongside you. We pray that this really set something free or invited a new perspective. And we're so grateful that you tuned in.
Okay, guys, for this week's Love Notes, we wanted to do a fun little winter theme. So just talking about all things Christmas and winter. First things first, we are currently not in December, but are you planning on decorating your home? What are the vibes we're going for this year?
For Christmas?
Yes.
Absolutely. I thank you for asking.
I've been waiting for
this moment. I will say I don't go all out just because a majority of this time of the year for me will be like going back home.
Yeah.
But last year was my first Christmas. Well, it was my second Christmas in LA, but my first one living alone. And I went and like did the whole thing, like went and picked out my Christmas tree and then decorated it like exactly how I wanted. I had like my Pinterest vision, and that was such a beautiful, like special moment for me. So I definitely will be getting another Christmas tree. And then I left it like the entire time I was away back at home. And when I came back, honestly, she was still like, her thorns or thistles were still intact. Her thistles were still intact, and my home smelled delicious. It smelled like a fresh Christmas tree. So I'll definitely be doing that again this year.
That truly has become a favorite tradition. I feel like I'm not someone, like growing up, we mainly had a fake tree, so it does seem like it makes more sense, but honestly, I love picking up a fresh tree.
Me too.
And we just have it's funny because I almost feel like our home feels empty all year long. Like there's like a spot where I'm like, the tree just needs to be there. Like I notice it when it's not there the rest of the year. So I cannot wait to do that. And I always do garlands and a wreath, and I keep it super simple so that we don't really have to store things. Do you know how you're going to decorate your tree?
I don't yet for this year, but we'll see what comes up.
I've seen this just because with like church Christmas planning, I'm planning.
Oh, yeah.
I am planning 8 different trees right now, and I'm somehow trying to make it work. But I think the trend that I saw on Pinterest that I haven't seen before, last year it was those ribbons, doing the little bows. But
that's what I did last year, literally.
And it's so cute. I do think I'll do that for some of our trees. But they've been doing jumbo bows. Like you do one giant bow at the top. And there was even one, which I want to try for ours, is doing 3 different jumbo bows, like staggered.
Cute.
I think that would be super fun. So
I love that.
I'm going to try it. It could be really kooky or really cute. TBD.
Knowing you, it'll be cute.
Okay, favorite holiday Christmas food.
Okay. I love a lot of holiday things. I think it's like so the time for like sweets and desserts. But honestly, something I look forward to, and this is for Thanksgiving and like Christmas time. Thanksgiving will have already passed though by the time this is out, I'm pretty sure. But it's honestly like turkey and ham. Like,
okay.
I love turkey and ham. I love turkey and ham.
I do love turkey.
And I like never eat it throughout the year. I mean, turkey, like, yeah, like sliced deli turkey and like a sandwich, you know? But even then.
But a proper roast.
A proper roast.
Yeah.
I don't even eat deli like turkey that much, like on a sandwich. Like I'm more of a tuna salad girl. I'm so weird. I love tuna salad and chicken salad sandwiches. I don't know why. But there's something about it. Like, I look forward to the big turkey roast. I look forward to like the slices of ham, the gravy. Oh my gosh, it's so good. But I also am like, I love it so much that I love that it's only once a year, twice a year, because I actually don't think I could eat it that often, because like it's a lot. Like, it's a whole experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I haven't had a ham in so long, but
I love ham.
Sounds good.
I love ham.
I had some good ham last year, and I was like, wow, this is changing, because we didn't really have that growing up. We would just do turkey or chicken. So that changed my perspective. I don't know if this is holiday-y, but I always have loved dark chocolate, always. But I have been craving it like crazy, and I feel like that's all I can think about is how much chocolate I can justify consuming each day. And I am ready. Come December, we're gonna get creative. It's gonna be more than chocolate bars and chocolate ice cream. We are doing chocolate cakes. We are doing
chocolate brownies. We're doing everything that you could possibly think of.
Chocolate oatmeal.
Yeah. chocolate sandwich. It's just like a big salad. It's like romaine and like just chocolate on top.
A little sprinkle of romaine on top. A garnish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A mint leaf.
The goal is to get tired of chocolate, and I love mint chocolate. That is specific to the holidays.
Yeah,
I preserve her. I save her. So I can't wait.
I love
my mint.
I love it.
Okay. Any travel plans for Christmas?
The only travel plan for me would be going home to Texas.
How sweet and cozy.
Yeah. What about you?
We normally do John's family's place, so we'll probably do that, but this is putting it out to be held accountable. We are trying to do a Hawaii trip not for Christmas, more for our 5-year anniversary, because that's a few days before Christmas. So I would like to think that I'm going to be spending the holidays in Hawaii.
That would be so fun. I pray that happens.
Yes, I do too. Okay, last and final one, our favorite winter clothing item.
Hands down. Honestly.
Should we say it at the same time?
You think it's going to be the same thing?
Maybe.
Okay, yeah. 1, 2, 3. Beanie. I knew it. I knew it from the moment you said that. Beanie for sure. Okay, so I got a glimpse of this when we were in Ireland and Scotland. Not me and Marissa. I wish. But like when I was in Ireland and Scotland, I was obsessed. I put on my beanie every day. Didn't match my outfit. Who cares? I love my beanie. It's just comfort to my ears.
I love the feeling of a beanie.
Me too. And
you don't have to do your hair. It's so great.
Suddenly you're like way cuter than you were before. Your outfit's put together. I love it. And honestly, when I start needing my puffer, I'm not mad. I like my puffer.
Not mad at all.
I love looking like a Michelin man.
There is something about being so layered, having the luxury to like not need to layer so extensively because it never gets too cold, but just layering up just to be cozy.
Oh, love.
That is a love. Mm-hmm. Okay, we hope that got you in the Christmas holiday spirit. And as always, we love you guys and we can't wait to see you in our next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We pray this episode was encouraging and life-giving. If you found it valuable, please share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe.
And be sure to follow us along over on Instagram at With Love Always Podcast. Signing off with all of our love always, Bree
and Marissa.